There are days when you no longer recognize yourself, not because you've changed, but because you've had to wear too many masks just to survive. You smile at everyone. You make conversation. You share as if you're truly connecting. But deep down, you know, no one really sees you. And the worst part is, you don't see yourself anymore either. You used to be someone with real emotions. But to survive in a world where no one wants to hear them, you learned to silence your heart. You used to dream. But since no one truly supported you, you slowly turned your desires into jokes just to avoid being called foolish. You used to live authentically, but the more you lived, the better you got at hiding, because you realized society doesn't want your truth. They just want a version of you that makes them feel comfortable. And so, day after day, you became a copy of yourself, a polite, well-mannered, easygoing version, one that doesn't stand out or bother anyone. But the more you did that, the emptier you felt, even when you were surrounded by people, even when your phone kept buzzing, even when your calendar was packed. Ironically, you've never felt more alone than when you're in a crowd. Does that sound familiar? Have you ever been in a conversation while your mind wandered elsewhere, just wishing it would end, so you could return to your empty room? Have you ever stepped into a party and realized you were only there to play your social role? Have you ever felt exhausted from trying to fit in, and yet nowhere truly feels like home? It's not because you're negative. It's not because you're too difficult. It's not because there's something wrong with you. You're just touching something deeply real, something most adults silently ignore. We live in a world with too many relationships, but very little real connection. We talk to each other every day, but we rarely get to speak honestly. We have hundreds of friends on social media, but no one quiet enough to sit beside us when we're falling apart. We know how to impress, but we've forgotten how to live as ourselves. The truth is, you're not lonely because no one's around. You're lonely because you haven't been yourself in a very long time. We were taught that the more relationships we have, the happier we'll be. That the more likes we get, the more worthy our life becomes. That the more likable we are, the more love we'll receive. But no one told us, to be loved, you have to actually show up as a real human being, not as a polished copy. And the moment you abandon yourself just to be accepted by others is the same moment you begin losing your connection to who you truly are. You don't even know why you're sad anymore. Nothing excites you. You smile with everyone, but trust no one enough to really open up. Nothing major has been lost, but inside, something is breaking. You're not physically alone, but inside, there's a void that nothing can fill. You used to think people were just heartless, but the harsh truth is, the first person who left you was you. You left your true self to live as a persona. You put on a mask just to feel like you belong. And that very mask has numbed your ability to feel deeply. It blocks your real connection with anyone, even with yourself. Carl Jung called it the separation between the persona and the self. When we live far from who we truly are, we stop feeling alive. We just play roles. And this feeling of emptiness is the first warning sign. It's not something to fix. It's a message. You've been away from yourself for too long. If you're feeling this way, then this video is for you. Not to heal you with comforting words, but to call you home, back inside, where you don't need to act anymore, where you don't need to be understood. You just need to understand yourself. What are you holding on to that's keeping you stuck? I'm not asking about your job, not your relationships, not the image you present to the world. I'm asking about something else, something quieter, deeper, and more real. Have you ever walked into a room, smiled, and chatted with everyone, and still felt completely alone? Have you ever nodded in agreement with things you didn't actually believe in, Have you ever complimented someone just because you were afraid they wouldn't like you otherwise? These little things seem harmless, but they add up, and then they turn into a kind of emptiness that nothing external can ever fill. Carl Jung called this the consequence of a persona-based life. When we stop living authentically, we lose inner connection. And without inner connection, no relationship on the outside can ever feel whole. Let's be honest, you're not tired because you're lonely. You're tired because you've been performing too much. Every day, you push yourself to be pleasant, to smile, just to please others, to say safe things so you won't be disliked, to suppress your feelings just so you won't be labeled as too much. But have you ever asked yourself, how much of you is being drained by all of this? Emptiness doesn't show up in a day. It's built from hundreds of moments when you didn't dare be real, from thousands of times you stayed silent, nodded, pretended to be okay, pretended to be strong. You're stuck inside the very image you created. And now, that image has become your cage. You can't breathe. You can't live. You can't connect. You think, maybe I'm not attractive enough. You think, maybe I need to work on my communication skills. You think, maybe I should change to fit in better. No, you're just trying to fix a mask that's already too tight instead of taking it off. You don't need to learn how to be loved. You need to remember how to live authentically before you were told you had to become someone else. You don't need to charm more people. You need to stop charming the wrong ones by losing yourself. You're not lacking anyone. You're just too full of expectations that were never yours. And that's why you feel empty. You haven't been isolated by others. You've been isolated by the version of yourself you're trying so hard to maintain, thinking it will earn you acceptance. But acceptance built on pretending always comes with a price. You have to trade your real self. And once you've traded who you are, no matter what you gain, you're no longer whole. Carl Jung once wrote, "The greatest tragedy of the family is the unlived lives of the parents. But the tragedy of the individual is the unlived life of their own soul." Maybe you're in a relationship. Maybe you're surrounded by a complete family. Maybe you're respected in society. But when you no longer feel anything, when you have to plan every word just so no one gets offended, when you smile but feel like choking inside, then you're not living. You're just maintaining a role just enough not to be left behind. And that very role, over time, eats away at your inner life. We don't need more guides on how to fit in. We need a confrontation. How real are you in the life you're living? Are you loving in your own way or in a way that fits someone else's script? Are you speaking your truth or just saying what people want to hear? Are you living the rhythm of life you truly crave or just racing after what's acceptable? The more you run, the more exhausted you feel. The more you try to fit in, the lonelier you become. The more successful you are in others' eyes, the emptier you feel in your own heart. The harsh truth is, we've lost each other in a world full of noise. We put all our energy into making an impression, but no one stops long enough to really listen. We show up, but we're not truly present. And then one day, you wake up and realize, I don't know who I am anymore. If you feel like that, don't suppress it. Look at it. This isn't weakness. It's a cry for help, a warning from deep within. You've wandered too far from the place you truly belong. The problem isn't the crowd. It's not the relationships. It's not the circumstances. The problem is, you stopped being real just to avoid being hurt again. But that very safety is slowly killing you. You're not lonely because there's no one around. You're lonely because you've lost yourself. You smile just so no one asks if you're okay. You talk, but always feel like an outsider. You're in the crowd, but your mind feels like it's somewhere far away. You've learned how to be present without truly showing up. It's a survival skill, but also a silent tragedy. Because the more you show up that way, the more you feel like you don't belong. The more you're present, the more invisible you feel. The harder you try to connect, the lonelier you become. Think about it. How many times have you joined a gathering and left feeling more drained than energized? How many times have you scrolled through social media and instead of feeling connected, you felt even more alone, more inadequate, more pressured to be more? It's not because you're weak. It's not because you're too sensitive. It's because you're trying to survive in an environment that isn't real. An environment where people wear polished, edited personas, carefully curated to avoid getting hurt. A place where everyone talks about themselves, but no one truly listens. A world where living honestly has become a luxury. And so, you learned how to live unreal. You smile because you're supposed to. You speak because silence would make you look awkward. You care about others because you hope they might care back. But the more you give, the more left behind you feel. The harder you try, the more everything slips away. The more you seek connection, the more you feel like a misplaced puzzle piece. There's a quiet truth you don't dare say out loud. I don't feel like I belong in this world. You once thought that meant something was wrong with you, so you tried to fix yourself. You read books. You worked on your communication. You joined more communities. You tried everything to fit in, but still, no matter how much you changed, the feeling stayed. That subtle emptiness, that quiet misalignment, the sense that you're playing a role that was never yours. The feeling that your life is being dictated by something outside of you, not from within. Carl Jung called it the rebellion of the true self, when you've drifted too far from who you are. It's when your inner world begins to resist, not loudly, not violently, just a strange silence, a quiet disconnexion, a sadness with no name. You find yourself no longer caring about anything. What once brought you joy now feels dull. The people who once felt like home now feel distant. The world keeps moving, but you feel like you're standing outside of it. You try to name the emotion, but can't. You try to explain it, but no one understands. You try to open up, but get met with indifference or shallow advice. And so, you retreat inward. Not because you want to be alone, but because you're exhausted from trying to connect with people who never truly listen. You start living like a functional person but hollow inside. You work, you talk, you take care of your family, but none of it carries emotion anymore. Everything becomes duty. Life turns into obligation. That's the sign. You've lost connection with your true self. And if you don't pause, that emptiness will slowly begin to erode your soul. Carl Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." The deepest loneliness doesn't come from being alone. It comes from not being able to live as yourself anymore. The emptiness doesn't come from outside. It comes from something much deeper. You've stopped being yourself. You live to please others. You speak to meet social expectations. You behave as if you have no real emotions, just to avoid judgment. But then, the silence inside grows louder. You start to wonder, do I really exist anymore? You begin to fear not being abandoned, but losing something unseen, something essential. That's your intuition speaking. That's your soul asking for its right to exist. You don't need more people. You don't need more conversations. You just need one honest moment. A moment where you live as your true self. No defenses. No performance. No pretending. We live in a society where everyone is busy being liked, but forget how to be lovable in their own way. We lose ourselves in the race for validation, and by the time no one listens to us anymore, we realize we stopped listening to ourselves a long time ago. You're not lonely. You're disconnected. And reconnecting with others starts with reconnecting with yourself. But that only happens when you dare to live honestly again. No one truly sees you because you stopped showing up as your true self a long time ago. Her name was Claire, in her 30s, successful, beautiful, capable. People looked at Claire and said, she has it all. A prestigious job at a financial corporation, a lively circle of friends, an Instagram feed with thousands of likes on each photo. Claire knew how to make people like her. She knew how to use her eyes to build rapport, how to choose topics that fit the tone, how to avoid things that might offend. She was the kind of person no one could hate, but also the kind of person no one could truly reach. On the outside, Claire was complete. On the inside, she was slowly hollowing out. One night, after a company party, Claire came home late. She stepped into her luxury apartment where no one was waiting. She turned on the lights, took off her shoes, poured a glass of red wine, like always. But that night, she didn't turn on music. She didn't go into her room to change. She just sat on the couch and stared into the dark. Nothing had happened. No one said anything hurtful. No one abandoned her. But suddenly, Claire felt like she wasn't real anymore. She looked at the framed photo on the wall, a picture from a trip to Greece, with her smiling brightly, and she asked herself, was I really happy? Or was I just performing? Layer by layer, memories resurfaced. The times she nodded in agreement while filled with doubt, the times she pretended to be interested just to keep a connection, the times she said, it's okay, while breaking inside. And then, one question pierced through all her masks. Who am I, if I stop playing all these roles? Claire realized it had been a long time since she actually felt anything. She no longer felt present. She no longer felt alive. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't blame anyone. There was just a silence echoing in every corner of her heart. The next morning, Claire sent an email requesting 2 weeks off. She cancelled all her meetings, turned off social media, cut every line of connection to the outside world. She got in her car and drove away from the city, to a small cabin by a lake where no one knew who she was. The first 3 days were terrifyingly empty. No message notifications, no deadlines, no expectant glances, no one needing anything from her, and also no one confirming her value. She felt anxious, restless, like she had become invisible. But on the 4th day, something strange happened. For the first time in years, she looked at the lake without taking a picture. She let her tears fall without trying to wipe them away. She wrote in her journal without editing her words. And she whispered, I used to live honestly. I remember that, and I want to return. There was no dramatic twist. No one came to rescue her. No miracle. Just, she was tired enough to stop pretending, empty enough to finally face herself, brave enough to turn inward. 2 weeks later, when Claire returned, she wasn't the same. She still worked, still smiled, still kept her relationships. But she no longer replied to messages instantly, no longer said yes to dinner invites when she felt exhausted, no longer did things just to maintain an image. She chose truth over comfort. She chose silence over explanation. She chose deep connection over shallow impressions. And she started to feel truly present. A friend once asked her, "You've been quieter lately. Is something wrong?" Claire smiled. This time, a real smile. She replied, "No, I'm okay. I just don't need to perform to be loved anymore. I used to fear loneliness, but then I realized loneliness is not as scary as living a whole life without ever being myself. No, you don't feel empty because you're too different. You feel this way because you've been living too long in an environment where the truth has no place. No, you're not too sensitive. You're just a real person in a world that's becoming increasingly fake. No, You don't need to fix yourself. You just need to stop forgetting who you truly are. The problem isn't the crowd. The real problem is the growing gap between your persona, the social mask you wear, and yourself, the real person within. Carl Jung devoted his life to warning us. When the distance between persona and self grows too wide, people begin to feel lost, disconnected, emotionally numb. You can have hundreds of relationships, but if none of them are rooted in honesty, you'll still feel as lonely as if you're floating in a vacuum. You can live what looks like a good life by society's standards, but if that life doesn't reflect your true self, it's nothing more than a well-decorated prison. We weren't born to perform. We weren't born to be loved by losing who we are. We came into this life to be present as ourselves. Every time you stay silent to keep the peace, but feel unsettled inside, you're walking away from your true self. Every time you smile, to move past it while your heart is aching, you're abandoning yourself. Every time you pretend to be fine just because no one has the patience to hear the truth, you're helping that loneliness grow deeper inside. The price of a safe life is a slowly dying soul. The price of being accepted is no longer being yourself. And the cost of living this way is emptiness. We were never taught how to face emptiness. We were only taught how to fill it with work, with relationships, with shopping, with social media, with jokes, busy schedules, and never-ending goals. But have you noticed, the more you try to fill it, the emptier it becomes. The more you try to do, the more exhausted you feel. The louder you laugh, the more haunting the silence inside becomes. Because emptiness isn't a void. It's a signal from deep within, saying, "Stop, listen to me. I am you before you were taught to become someone else." Stoicism doesn't teach us to suppress emotions. It teaches us to face them like someone brave enough to stop running. A Stoic is not someone who's cold or rigid. A Stoic is someone who dares to accept the truth, even when it hurts. And the truth here is, you don't feel empty because something is missing. You feel empty because you haven't really been there. You might be physically present, but your real self has been absent for a long time. And the longer you let that true self stay gone, the more you begin to feel like a ghost in your own life. Carl Jung once wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. But you can't heal without going inward. You can't build real relationships if you're still acting. You can't connect with anyone until you connect with yourself." Emptiness is not the enemy. It's a signal that's asking you, are you still there? Or have you already left yourself behind? So how do you return? You don't have to give up everything. You don't need to disappear from life like Claire did. You don't have to move to the woods. Turn off your phone. Vanish. You just need to pause for one small moment. Take a deep breath. Be still and ask yourself, whose life am I living right now? Am I truly present in my own life? Am I honoring my real feelings? If the answers bring you to tears, then congratulations. You've just met yourself again. No, you don't need someone else to fill your emptiness. You just need to stop filling it and start listening. No, you're not truly lonely. You've simply lost your way from yourself. And no, you don't have to go searching for who you are. You just need to return to the place where you left you. You don't need more people. You need real presence. You don't need more praise. You need honesty with yourself. You don't need to make others understand. You need to stop waiting for understanding from those who've never truly seen you. You were not abandoned. You just abandoned yourself to be accepted by others. You don't feel empty because no one loves you. You feel empty because you've lost the right to love your true self. We live in a world where authenticity is seen as inconvenient, where kindness gets mistaken for obedience, where silence is labeled as indifference, and where pain must be hidden perfectly, or else it's seen as weakness. But remember this: real connection only begins when you stop performing. Only when you lower your defenses can others truly reach you. Only when you stop trying to impress can you truly show up. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And you can't do that if you keep living for someone else's expectations. It's time to pause and ask a question that seems simple. Am I living as the person I chose to be? Or are you living out of reflex, as a product of circumstance, as a role that was written for you long ago? The farther you stray from your true self, the deeper the emptiness grows. The more you suppress your feelings just to keep others comfortable, the more suffocated you feel in your own chest. You don't need someone to rescue you. You just need a silence deep enough to return. Return inward. Return to that true voice inside, the one that's been drowned out for too long by the noise of expectations, social media, and standards. You might lose a few relationships when you start being real. You might stop being liked as much as before. You might feel different, out of place. But in return, you'll feel lighter. You'll be able to breathe. You'll finally hear yourself again. And once you begin to hear yourself, emptiness will no longer feel like an abyss. It will become the soil where your true self can start growing again. No, you're not broken. No, you're not lost because there's something wrong with you. You're just a real person living in a time where everyone's afraid of being real. But that's not a reason to give up on yourself. Remember the line from the beginning of this video. You're surrounded, yet feel invisible. Now you know why, don't you? Because if you're not truly present in your own life, then no matter how many people surround you, you'll still feel like a shadow. You don't need more spotlights. You need one moment in the dark to recognize the light that comes from within. You once laughed, just so no one would ask. You once blended in just so you wouldn't be left behind. You once did everything just to avoid feeling lonely. But then you realized those were the very things that made you lose yourself. You've gone so far trying to be accepted by others. Now, pause and learn to accept yourself. You once stayed silent just to avoid upsetting people. Now, stay silent to hear your true inner voice. You once braced yourself to appear strong in a world that has no space for tender souls. Now, soften and let yourself truly live. You don't need to do anything more. Just stop running. Stop filling the void. Stop pleasing. Just be here, as you are. No defenses. No performance. No expectations. Just presence, honesty in this moment. And you'll see the emptiness begins to dissolve. Not because it's filled, but because you're no longer afraid of it. Emptiness is not something to hide. It's a sign that you've become awake enough to see what's real and what's just a role. You are not alone. You are simply being called home. Back to your original self. Back to the child who once laughed freely without needing approval. Back to the person who never had to pretend just to feel worthy. You have the right to be real. You have the right to feel sad without needing a valid reason. You have the right to walk away without needing to explain. You have the right to hold on to yourself, even if someone doesn't understand. That's not selfishness. That's awareness. Carl Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. The scariest part isn't being authentic. It's daring to accept all of yourself, even the imperfect parts. But that's also the thing that frees you from every performance. If you're feeling empty right now, don't try to fill it with things outside yourself. Don't try to prove that you're okay. Just pause. Just breathe. Let that silence teach you something you've forgotten for most of your life. You don't have to become anyone. You just need the courage to return to who you already are. And if that journey costs you a few relationships, If some people walk away when you stop playing the easy-to-love version of yourself, let them go. Because anyone who can't stay when you're being real will never be able to walk with you when you grow in the right direction. If you're feeling that tightness in your chest, don't swallow it down. Don't scream it out. Just sit with it. That knot is saying something important, something real, something that needs to be heard. You are not alone. We, the ones waking up in the middle of the crowd, are finding each other, and if we're meant to, we'll meet again on the path of living true, living deep, and living whole. If you've spent your whole life just trying to be approved by others, watch this next video. You were not broken. You were buried. Where we stop asking, how can I be loved? And start asking, how can I stop burying my true self ever again?